Hey guys, this is Nick from SharkNet. Like most of you in this quarantine, I have been bored out of my mind, so I have taken up the hobby of making a ridiculous amount of homemade bread. So today I'm going to be giving you guys a quick rundown on how to make your very own homemade cinnamon raisin bread. Step one, you are going to put 1 cup of milk, half a stick of butter, 3 tablespoons of honey. To heat all of that over a medium heat, and you are going to let the butter melt and heat up the milk. Keep stirring, and once the butter has melted, remove from heat. You're going to want to use a thermometer to make sure the temperature is between 110 and 115 degrees. If you don't have one of these, I don't know what to tell you. You're going to take your 1 package of yeast, or 2 1/4 teaspoons, and you are going to pour all that right in. Then you're going to want to stir it around until it starts to dissolve, and then you can let it sit for about 10 minutes or until you start to see it foam up. Now, it's okay if the butter and milk don't stay mixed and start to separate. That's not a problem at all. While you wait for the yeast to sit, you can measure out 3½ cups of all-purpose flour and mix in about a teaspoon of salt. So this is what you want to start to see after about 10 minutes, this little foaming happening. So you're going to whisk together 2 eggs, that along with raisins to a large bowl. Add in your yeast mixture. Ooh, look at that. Goodness in there. You're gonna combine all those ingredients. Add in your flour about 1 cup at a time, and then start mixing with a wooden spoon. It'll slowly get more dough-like. You just want to keep adding a little bit of flour at a time. Make sure not to add any more in until what you added already is fully dissolved. Once you add the last of the flour, you'll start to see it become like a real dough. It's gonna get pretty difficult to mix. You're just gonna have to keep powering through it. Once you start to get to the end, it's gonna start to get really thick. So you might have to get in there with your hands and start mixing by hand. Make sure that you've washed them. And you're just gonna get in there and really mix. Make sure that make sure that everything is all thoroughly combined. It's gonna be a little sticky and messy, but that's what happens when you make bread from scratch. Make sure you've scraped the sides for all the excess flour. You don't wanna lose any of that. Next, we are going to lightly flour a surface. Just spread it around a bit. Make sure there's some flour on your hands. And then you're gonna wanna grab your dough and just plop it down and start kneading. Now you might need to keep adding a little bit of flour just to make it workable and not super sticky. So make sure to always have some extra flour on hand. You just sprinkle it around. If your counter, if you choose to do this on a counter, is particularly cold, you might have to wipe it down with a hot towel because you don't want the dough to get too cold, otherwise it's really difficult to knead. Now you're going to want to keep doing this, which, if you can't tell, is basically pushing down, spreading it out, being careful not to destroy your raisins, occasionally flipping up, turning around, just working it. And basically what this does is builds up a nice gluten mesh to make sure the bread is all light and fluffy and doesn't collapse and become all sad and dense like every gross, heavy bread you've ever had. Because we don't want that now, do we? Now this particular bread you want to knead for about 10 minutes, which feels like a while when you're doing this, and this would be a nice time for some friendly banter with a special guest, but this is quarantine, so we're not allowed to see anybody. Then, once you're done kneading your dough, comes the fun part. You know it's done, it should be nice, smooth, satiny. Once you're done kneading your dough, you take a large bowl some Pam and you spray the inside of the bowl. Just give it a nice coat. And then you're gonna place your dough in the bowl, turn it over once, and then you can just cover it up and stick it in a warm place to rise for about an hour. And the best part is, in that hour, you can just do whatever you want. Alright, so our dough has finished rising. Look at that expansion. That is hot. And we've also been joined by a guest star. He's finished doing its thing. We're gonna start on the cinnamon filling. So you're gonna take 2 tablespoons of melted butter, or a quarter of a stick melted, and then you take a 1/4 cup of light brown sugar. Just add that in, start mixing it up. And you're also gonna add 2 tablespoons of cinnamon and just a pinch of salt. So you mix all that together until you get a nice mixture. Then you can just put that to the side. Now we're gonna flour our surface again. Get to bring back the dough. Look at that now. This is not the same guy we set to rise. So you might need to punch it down a bit, and then you're gonna spread it out. You can use your hands, or you can use a roller if you'd like. Don't want to push too hard because same as before, you don't want to destroy your raisins. And you want to try and get it about the length of your bread pan. And I can't show you my bread pan because it's currently holding up my phone. Once you've got a nice size, you can bring back your cinnamon filling, and you are just gonna spread that out. Now, once your cinnamon filling is all nice and spread out, you're gonna start at the bottom and start rolling it up. See here, we're just gonna nicely roll this up. Here is my loaf pan. So you're rolling this up, and then you're gonna, when you get to the end, you're gonna wanna close that up and really seal the seam good, otherwise it's gonna start to fall apart a bit. Now, once it's all rolled up, you can fold the ends underneath, make sure the seam is down, and then you're gonna take your bread pan, and you're just gonna take some butter and start greasing your pan. You can also use spray, but if you're making cinnamon raisin bread, obviously you gotta use butter. Now, once our loaf pan is sufficiently buttered, you can grab your dough and you are just going to place it nicely into your pan. Now, this doesn't look like much, but we are going to let this do its second rise. So that involves sticking it in a warm place again for another hour, and then we'll check back and see what happens. Now that is what we like to see. So once your dough is completed its second rise, you are going to preheat the oven to 375. Once your oven is preheated, you are gonna grab your nice, beautiful loaf of bread, stick it right in the oven. You might need to raise the racks to make sure that it has room to rise up, like so. And then once it's in, you just bake it on 375 for 40 to 50 minutes. We'll start with 40. And the bread has been completed. After 40 minutes, just take it out, put it on a wire. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe.